Female fans can only imagine what it would have been like to have Elvis Presley as your date to your high school prom.
So many people that loved him and followed his career really didn't know the true Southern gentleman and the compassionate young man that he was growing up.
However, for the girl who actually was the date to Elvis Presley's own high school prom, it sadly turned out to be a disappointment. And just to be clear, this picture of Elvis with girlfriend, Dixie Locke, was not for his senior prom. This was taken the night of Dixie's junior prom 2 years later in May 1955, which we will discuss later in this video. Elvis Presley's date to his own prom was Regis Wilson, who was 4 years younger than Elvis. She was a freshman and Elvis was a senior. They started dating in February 1953. They met at a party at Lauderdale Courts, where Elvis lived for 3 years with his parents. Regis had also lived there, but moved that year with her mother to a house nearby on Meriwether Avenue. Quote, "One of the biggest dreams Elvis had in those days was to one day buy a house like this for his mother," Regis recalled. "He was always talking about how pretty my house was and how one day he wanted her to have a house just like this one," unquote. Elvis used to come visit Regis there. Elvis would bring his guitar and used to sing songs for her. Regis said he sang "My Happiness" more than any other song. Elvis and Regis would double date, often with Presley's cousin, Gene Smith. They would ride in the Presley's 1942 Lincoln to go to drive-in movies, or drive to Riverside Park, or just over the bridge to West Memphis, Arkansas. Sometimes they would go to the all-night gospel sings at Ellis Auditorium, where Elvis would always sing along from his seat. Quote, "He was very much a gentleman at all times," Regis said. "He had a tremendous sense of humor. He could laugh at himself a lot. He joked a lot with others. Elvis always dressed differently. Sometimes he would show up wearing a bright yellow sport coat with brown trim. I would always just close my eyes because people didn't dress like that in those days. But Elvis did," unquote. Regis was thrilled when Elvis asked her to be his date to the prom. She wore a strapless pink taffeta dress, and Elvis gave her a pink carnation as a corsage. Regis confirms that Elvis was wearing a dark blue rented tuxedo, and, yes, blue suede shoes. Elvis looked different compared to most of the boys who were wearing white jackets. She recalled that Elvis rented a new blue Chevy just for the night. However, when they went to the prom, held in the Continental Ballroom of the Peabody Hotel in downtown Memphis, Regis discovered something startling: Elvis Presley could not dance. "When we got to the prom, Elvis told me he didn't know how to dance. So we sat out the entire evening, never dancing once," Regis said. Of course, this was before rock and roll's heyday, and the dances of the time included fast dancing like the jitterbug and slower sophisticated steps to big band music, which Elvis did not feel comfortable doing. Quote, "I love to dance," Regis explained, "but I said, that's all right. So we sat and talked and drank Cokes all night. Later, I saw him in Jailhouse Rock on TV, and I thought back to that evening, and I said to myself, I thought he told me he couldn't dance," unquote. Before the night was over, Elvis and Regis got their photo taken in front of the big red heart at the dance. But that night, there was still more disappointment to come. There was supposed to be a party at a drive-in on Lamar Street after the prom, Regis said. "Some of his friends were going to meet us there, so we drove there and waited, but his friends never showed up," unquote. The future king of rock and roll ended his date by midnight. "I kissed Elvis every night from the second date on," said Regis in a 1989 interview in People magazine. "He was a good kisser." Shortly after the prom, Regis moved to Florida, but she never said goodbye to Elvis. "I didn't tell Elvis because you just didn't call boys in those days," Regis explained. "I figured he'd find out I had left by driving by the house and seeing I was gone," unquote. She never saw Elvis again. On a happier note for Elvis, he started dating Dixie Locke 6 months later in January 1954. They both attended the First Assembly of God Church in Memphis. Dixie was 3 years younger than Elvis, who was now working full-time at a regular job. The beginning of Dixie and Elvis's courtship was like a fairy tale. They got along so well, and their families spent time with each other, almost like Dixie and Elvis were already married. That summer, Elvis finally got called in for an audition at Sun Records in early July 1954, the same week that Dixie went to Florida on a family vacation. Imagine Dixie's excitement when she returned 2 weeks later to hear Elvis Presley's first record, That's All Right, on the radio. Her boyfriend had become a local star overnight.
He was a little shy about meeting and talking with people, but when he sang, when he had his guitar, when he felt that he could entertain or perform for someone, he knew, I think, that he had such a God-given talent that when he got to the point where he could share that, it was like he had no inhibitions, or he was not timid. He could sing and do and pretty much perform the way he wanted to, as long as he was singing.
While Elvis was paying his dues out on the road towards the end of 1954 and throughout 1955, Dixie was still in high school. Elvis made a point of taking a break from his tour so he could take Dixie to her junior prom on May 6, 1955. After being chased by a group of girls across the football field at his show in Alabama the night before, Elvis drove back to Memphis to escort Dixie to the dance at the Claridge Hotel. By this time, 20-year-old Elvis was well known in the South. His life had changed dramatically from the time of his high school prom date with Regis 2 years earlier. For Dixie's prom, Elvis had his outfit of a pink jacket, black pants, and pink and black cummerbund tailored by Lansky Brothers clothing store on Beale Street. He drove Dixie to the prom in his pink Cadillac, along with cousin Gene Smith and his date, Bessie, who was a friend of Dixie's. This time things would be different for Elvis at the dance. Quote, just like his unique style of music, Elvis also had his own original moves on the dance floor, described Dixie. In fact, I had a hard time keeping up with him on the fast songs, which made our slow dances even more special. I was completely swept off my feet while dancing cheek to cheek with Elvis as he sang quietly in my ear, unquote. Dixie's memoir, released in 2021, describes how their relationship ended in the coming months. But that night at Dixie's prom was the one for the storybooks. As she described in her book, quote, all of my friends who once thought I was kind of weird for dating someone so different, now wanted to be me, and every guy wanted to be him. We were the belles of the ball. Although we wanted this night to last forever, we ended our magical evening with a tender kiss, unquote. There is one aspect of Elvis's personality that people today either don't know about, or they have forgotten, explained Regis in a 1990 interview. He was a very simple, sweet person. He thoroughly enjoyed just sitting there watching the Mississippi River roll by, and he loved driving cars, unquote. In 1979, Regis went back to Memphis for her mother's funeral. She drove to Graceland with her brother and saw it for the first time. Regis told her brother, quote, well, Elvis finally bought that house for his mother that he was always talking about. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like this video to help this channel grow. For more fascinating facts about Elvis, pick up one of Trina Young's For Elvis books. Read a free excerpt at elvisbiography.net. Please subscribe to this channel and ring the bell for notifications of future videos. And keep watching more Elvis videos here.